My friends ask me to pretend to be someone I'm not, and that should have been the first sign this wasn't going to end well. It started 3 nights ago when they cornered me at our usual bar, grinning like boys who had just lit a fuse. "We set you up on a blind date," one of them said, "but you have to go along with it, just for tonight. Tell her you're 32, corporate job, serious, mature." I laughed because I thought they were joking. "I'm 25, I said, "and I still split rent with you." "That's the fun part," they replied. Apparently, she had been told something too, that I was established, stable, older, and I had been told she was a shy, awkward girl around my age who needed a confidence boost. It was supposed to be harmless. But when I walked into that dimly lit restaurant and saw her standing near the window, confident posture, striking curves framed by a fitted dress, a presence that silenced the room, I felt my stomach drop. She wasn't awkward. She wasn't my age, and the way she looked at me told me she had been lied to, just like I had. That's when I realized this joke had already gone too far. She extended her hand before I could say a word. "You must be the 32-year-old corporate professional," she said, her voice smooth, controlled, the kind of voice that didn't rush itself. I shook her hand. It was warm, firm, the kind of handshake that told you immediately this was a woman who had long stopped apologizing for taking up space. "And you must be the shy, awkward girl who needed a confidence boost," I replied. She blinked once. Then the corner of her mouth curved. Not quite a smile, but something close to it. Something that said touché. "They really sold us completely different people," she said, pulling her hand back slowly. "They really did." For a moment we just stood there in that quiet restaurant, the soft clink of glasses and low murmur of other conversations filling the air around us. I watched her glance toward the exit. Just briefly. I did the same, and I think we both understood in that silent exchange that we had 2 choices: leave, or stay and figure out what exactly our friends had thrown us into. She sat down first. I took that as my answer. The menu became our first truce. She ordered sparkling water with lemon. I ordered the same, mostly because I suddenly couldn't remember how to read words properly. She noticed. I could tell by the way she pressed her lips together to suppress something, amusement probably. "You don't have to stay, you know," she said, not unkindly. "If this is too unexpected, are you giving me an out?" I asked. "I'm giving us both one," she corrected. I set the menu down. "What if I don't want it?" She looked at me then, really looked at me. Not the way you look at someone when you're deciding if they're attractive, but the way you look at someone when you're deciding if they're real. "How old are you actually?" she asked. There was no point in maintaining a lie that had already collapsed at the door. 25, I said. Something shifted behind her eyes. Not disgust, not dismissal. Something more complicated than either of those things. "I'm 34, she said quietly. 9 years. The number sat between us like a stone dropped into still water. Not violent, but impossible to ignore once you'd seen the ripples. "Does that change things?" I asked. She tilted her head slightly, and I noticed it for the first time. That small, particular gesture she made when she was genuinely considering something rather than performing consideration. "It changes the context," she said carefully. "It doesn't necessarily change the evening." I exhaled without meaning to. She caught it. "Nervous?" she asked, and there it was, the first real flicker of playfulness beneath all that composure. "Terrified," I admitted. "You're not what I was expecting." "Neither are you," she said. "Though I'll admit, my version of you is somewhat more refreshing than what I was promised." "Refreshing," I repeated. "That's a very polite word for younger than advertised." She laughed then. A real one, brief and unguarded, the kind that escapes before you can decide whether to let it out. It changed her whole face, softened it, made her look simultaneously younger and more beautiful. "Our friends are terrible people," she said. "The absolute worst," I agreed. "I'm genuinely reconsidering every relationship in my life right now. And yet here you are. Still sitting, and yet here you are, I replied. Still talking to me. She picked up her glass, took a slow sip, and regarded me over the rim with an expression I couldn't fully decode, part curiosity, part caution, part something warmer that she hadn't quite decided to name yet. I'm Elena, she said, as if we were starting over, as if we were choosing to begin. I'm Marcus, I told her. She nodded once, slowly. And somewhere between the lie that brought us here and the truth that kept us seated, something quiet and unexpected began. Not with fireworks or grand declarations, but with two people who had been handed a joke and were slowly, carefully, deciding it wasn't funny anymore. The food arrived, and neither of us touched it immediately. That's the thing about a conversation that starts finding its rhythm. You forget that the world around you has practical requirements. The waiter set our plates down with a polite smile, glanced between us once, and quietly disappeared. I think even he sensed we were in the middle of something fragile and worth protecting. So, Elena said, finally picking up her fork. What do you actually do? Since the corporate executive story has been thoroughly dismantled, I'm a graphic designer, I said. Freelance, mostly. I work from home, I drink too much coffee, and I once spent 40 minutes designing a logo for a client who ultimately wanted it to look like clip art from 2003. She pressed her lips together. And did you give them what they wanted? I gave them what they deserved, I said solemnly. She laughed again, and this time she didn't try to pull it back. It rolled out of her freely, warm and unfiltered, and it did something to the air in the room. Made it lighter somehow. What about you? I asked. Interior architect, she said. I redesign spaces, offices, homes, occasionally restaurants like this one. She glanced around briefly, professionally. Though I would have handled the lighting differently. Too dim? Too trying to be romantic, she said. Good lighting should feel effortless. The moment you notice it's trying, it's already failed. I leaned back slightly, watching her. You have opinions. I have standards, she corrected with a precise little smile. There's a difference. Is there? Standards, she said, are the ones you hold for yourself. Opinions are the ones you inflict on others. And which one is the lighting criticism? She tilted her head. That gesture again. Somewhere in between. Somewhere between the appetizers and the main course. The sarcasm softened into something else entirely. We stopped performing wit for each other and started actually talking. She told me about a project she was currently designing. A family home renovation where the wife wanted minimalist Scandinavian and the husband wanted something that looked like a hunting lodge. She described negotiating between them with such dry, precise humor that I found myself leaning forward without realizing it. I told her about a children's book illustration project I'd taken on impulsively, despite having no experience with children's books, and how I was now 3 weeks deep and genuinely invested in whether a cartoon rabbit found his missing carrot. Did he find it? She asked. Completely seriously. Not yet, I said, but I believe in him. She smiled at that. Not the polished, careful smile from earlier. This one reached her eyes. Stayed there a moment longer than necessary. You're not what I expected either, she said quietly. I want you to know that. I came here expecting to feel condescended to or bored. I came ready to leave after 20 minutes. What changed your mind? She considered the question honestly, swirling the lemon in her glass slowly. You didn't pretend, she said finally. Most men your age would have held on to the lie a little longer, tried to recover it. You just let it go. Lying requires energy I'd rather spend elsewhere, I said. Where? I met her eyes. Here, apparently. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that meant something had shifted, that words had done their job, and now something quieter was taking over. She looked down at her plate first, a soft exhale. A small, private smile she didn't fully hide, and I sat there, across from a woman I had known for less than 2 hours, feeling something I hadn't felt in a very long time. The specific, terrifying warmth of not wanting a moment to end. I reached for my fork finally. Took a bite of food that had gone slightly cold and didn't care even a little. If you've ever been somewhere you didn't plan to be and realized you were exactly where you needed to be, drop a comment below. Because right now, sitting across from Elena, that's exactly how I felt. Because somewhere between the joke and the laughter and the honest, unhurried conversation, I had stopped tracking time entirely, and that, I would later understand, was the first sign of something real. I didn't want the night to end, but as we finally stood to leave, her phone lit up on the table. She glanced at the screen, and just like that, every trace of warmth drained from her face. She turned the phone face down before I could see the name, but I saw enough. The way her shoulders drew slightly inward. The way her jaw tightened, just barely. The kind of tension that lives beneath the surface of someone practiced at composing themselves quickly. She picked up her glass, realized it was empty, and set it back down. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Fine," she said. Too quickly. It was the first time all evening she had sounded rehearsed. I didn't push. Something told me that whatever had just landed on that screen was a door she wasn't ready to open. Not here, not tonight. Not with someone she had known for less than 3 hours. So I did what felt right. I picked up the conversation exactly where we had left it, as if the interruption hadn't happened. "So the hunting lodge husband," I said. "Did he at least get one mounted antler? Somewhere discreet?" She blinked, refocused, and slowly, like color returning to a room after a cloud passes, the warmth came back into her expression. "One small shelf," she said. "In the garage, where it belongs." I raised my glass, a diplomatic victory. She clinked hers against it, and we both pretended the last 60 seconds hadn't happened. We walked out of the restaurant together, without quite deciding to. It simply happened. The meal ended, the coats came on, and we moved through the door side by side, as if that were the natural conclusion to the evening. The night air was cool, and carried the faint smell of rain that hadn't arrived yet. She pulled her coat a little tighter, and I noticed she didn't reach for her phone again. We stood on the pavement outside, neither of us moving toward the street. "I have a question," I said. "You've had several tonight," she replied. "You might as well continue." "The age gap thing," I said carefully. "You made a comment inside about being too experienced. What did you mean by that?" She was quiet for a moment. A taxi moved slowly past us, its yellow light cutting through the dim street. "I meant," she said finally, "that I've lived through things that change you, relationships that reshape you. And sometimes when you sit across from someone younger, you wonder if they're ready for the version of you that came out the other side. And what version is that?" She looked at me with an expression that was equal parts honesty and self-protection. "Careful," she said simply. I became very careful. I turned to face her more fully. "Elena, I'm 25, not 20. I'm not looking for something easy. Easy has never particularly interested me." Something moved behind her eyes. A consideration, a quiet recalculation. "You say that now," she said softly. "I say that now," I agreed, "because now is what we have." She studied me for a long moment in that unhurried way of hers, the way that made you feel genuinely seen rather than simply looked at. Then she exhaled slowly into the cool night air. "I don't usually date younger men," she said. "I know," I replied. "You mentioned." "There's a reason," she added, and her voice had changed, just slightly. Something underneath it now, something heavier. I waited. She opened her mouth, and then her phone buzzed again, twice, persistent. She closed her eyes briefly. One single controlled breath. "I should go," she said. "Elena Marcus." She said my name the way you say something you want to hold carefully. Tonight was genuinely unexpected, in the best way. "But?" I said. She smiled, and it was the saddest version of a smile I had seen all evening. "No but," she said quietly. "Just give me a little time." She flagged a cab before I could respond, stepped toward it, then paused with her hand on the door and turned back once. If you're feeling what I was feeling in this moment, that specific ache of watching someone walk away when you're not ready for them to go, hit that subscribe button. Because this story is only just beginning. For what it's worth, she said, you were nothing like what I was told. Neither were you, I replied. She smiled once more, real, unguarded, and gone too quickly. 3 days passed. No message, no call. And then, on the 4th day, a mutual friend called me. Not to talk about Elena, but to warn me about something. Something about her past that my friends had deliberately left out. The call came at 10:30 on a Tuesday morning. I was sitting at my desk, pretending to work on the rabbit illustration, but mostly staring at a blank canvas, and thinking about a woman who said, "Give me a little time," and had so far taken 72 hours of it. My coffee had gone cold. The rabbit remained carrotless when I saw the name on my screen. James, the one friend in our group I actually trusted with anything serious, I picked up immediately. "Hey," I said, "hey." A pause. The kind that tells you someone is choosing their words carefully. "So, Elena." I sat up straighter. "What about her?" Another pause. Longer this time. I heard him exhale slowly on the other end, and something in my chest tightened without permission. "We probably should have told you something before the setup," he said. I wanted to. The others thought it would make you not go. "James, she just got out of something serious," he said. "And I don't mean recent serious, I mean the kind of relationship that leaves marks." I was quiet, waiting. "His name is Daniel," James continued. "They were together for 4 years, engaged for one of them. He called it off about 8 months ago. No clean reason. Just stopped showing up emotionally, and then eventually stopped showing up entirely." The words landed quietly but heavily, like furniture being moved in a room upstairs. You feel it in the floor beneath you without quite seeing it. "She hasn't really dated since," James said. "Not seriously. Our friends thought a low-stakes joke date might just loosen things up for her. Get her out of her apartment, out of her head. They didn't think you'd actually..." He stopped. "Didn't think I'd actually what?" I asked. "Connect," he said simply. "None of us thought it would actually turn into something." I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling for a moment. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. "Because she called me this morning," James said. "She asked about you, casually. Trying to be casual, anyway. She asked what kind of person you were, whether you were serious or just..." Another pause. "Just someone who would make her feel something and then disappear." Something moved in my chest, warm and complicated. "What did you tell her?" I asked quietly. "The truth," James said. "That you're annoyingly genuine and that if she gave you the chance to show up, you would." I was silent for a moment, processing the weight of everything he had just handed me. "The ex," I said carefully. "Daniel. Is he still around?" The pause this time was the longest of all. "He reached out to her recently," James said. "I don't know the details, but I know she didn't look okay when I saw her 2 days ago." I closed my eyes. There it was. The buzzing phone at the restaurant, the drained expression, the careful smile at the cab door. All of it rearranged itself now into something I could actually read. And what I read was a woman standing at a crossroads she hadn't asked to be placed at, carrying weight from a love that had failed her, trying to decide whether the ground was safe enough to take another step. And somewhere in that picture was a man named Daniel who had already broken something precious and was apparently not finished being present in her story. "Marcus," James said, "I'm not telling you to walk away. I'm telling you to go in with your eyes open." "I know," I said. "She's worth the patience," he added quietly, "but it's going to require some." After we hung up, I sat in the silence of my apartment for a long time. The cold coffee, the unfinished illustration, the faint sound of traffic 4 floors below. I thought about the way she laughed, unguarded and sudden, like it surprised even her. I thought about the way she said my name at the cab door, careful and deliberate, like she wanted to hold it correctly. And I thought about a woman who had learned to be very careful. Because someone had taught her, painfully, that she needed to be, I picked up my phone. I typed a message. The rabbit still hasn't found his carrot. I thought you should know. I stared at it for a full minute. Then I hit send. She replied 4 hours later, not immediately. Not the way someone replies when they've been waiting. The way someone replies when they've picked up the phone, read the message, set it back down, walked away, come back, and finally allowed themselves to respond. Tell the rabbit not to give up. The best things are usually just out of reach for a reason. I read it twice, then a third time. Then I typed back. Is that rabbit wisdom or Elena wisdom? 3 minutes passed. Both, she wrote, obviously. And just like that, something that had been holding its breath for 4 days finally exhaled. We didn't rush into anything. That felt important. Like an unspoken agreement between two people who both understood that the most fragile things in life are the ones worth moving slowly around. We texted through the rest of that week. Carefully at first, then, with increasing ease, the way a conversation finds its current once the awkward shallows have been crossed. She sent me a photo of a lighting fixture she'd found for a client, something warm and ambient and completely unfussy. This, she wrote, is what effortless looks like. I sent her a draft of the rabbit illustration. Progress report, I captioned it. She wrote back 3 minutes later. He looks determined. I respect that. He gets it from his creator, I replied. A longer pause. Then, smooth, Marcus. Very smooth. I smiled at my phone like an idiot and didn't care even slightly. By the second week, we graduated to phone calls. The first one lasted 40 minutes and was supposed to last 10. The second one lasted 2 hours. Somewhere in the middle of the third, I realized we had stopped talking about safe, surface things entirely, and had moved into the deeper water without ceremony. The kind of conversations that happen late at night, when your guard has been worn down by comfort. She told me about the home she grew up in, a house that was always slightly too quiet, where her mother valued aesthetics over warmth, which was perhaps why she had grown up to build spaces that prioritized both equally. I listened without interrupting, just held the space for her words. In return, I told her about my father, how he worked with his hands his entire life, and never once talked about his feelings, but built my mother a bookshelf every single anniversary, because he knew she loved reading, and he loved her. How I had watched that, and quietly decided that love was something you demonstrated rather than declared. That's beautiful, she said softly, and a little unfair to the rest of us. Why unfair? Because now I'm holding every man I meet up to a man who built bookshelves, she said. That's an unreasonable standard. Marcus, I'll learn carpentry, I said immediately. She laughed, that real, sudden, unguarded laugh. And for a moment through the phone, across the distance between us, it felt like being in that restaurant again. Warm, unhurried. Right, we made plans to meet again. A proper second meeting, not engineered by scheming friends, but chosen deliberately by two people who were done, pretending they weren't curious about each other. She picked a small gallery cafe she loved. Neutral ground, she said. Somewhere with good natural light and no agenda. I arrived 7 minutes early and spent 6 of them convincing myself to breathe normally. She walked in wearing a deep burgundy coat, her dark hair loose around her shoulders, and she spotted me immediately across the room. Something in her expression when she saw me, just a flicker, barely a second long, told me she had spent at least some portion of the past 2 weeks thinking about this moment too. You're early, she said, settling into the chair across from me. You're exactly on time, I replied. I'm 30 seconds late, she corrected. Still exactly on time, I said. She shook her head slowly, pressing her lips together against a smile. Your trouble, she said quietly. You keep showing up anyway, I replied, and then her phone buzzed on the table between us. She looked down, and I watched in real time right in front of me, the light go out of her eyes. If this story is hitting somewhere deep, If you've ever watched someone you care about carry a weight you couldn't lift for them, share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because what happened next nearly ended everything before it had the chance to begin. She stood up from the table, slowly, like someone who had just received news that required standing to process. "Marcus," she said, and her voice was different now, thinner. "I need to tell you something I should have told you sooner." I didn't speak. I simply waited. The way you wait when you understand that the next few moments belong entirely to someone else, and the most honest thing you can offer is stillness. Elena stood with her hand resting on the back of her chair, not quite holding it, not quite letting go. The gallery cafe moved softly around us. Someone across the room laughed at something. A cup clinked against a saucer. The world continued its ordinary business while ours quietly held its breath. "Daniel contacted me," she said. "He has been for the past 2 weeks. He wants to talk. He says he made a mistake." She paused. "He wants to try again." I absorbed that slowly. "And?" I asked quietly. She looked at me then, directly, unflinchingly, with the full weight of someone who had decided that honesty was the only currency worth spending. "And I haven't responded," she said. "Not once. But I've been carrying it. Every single day since that night at the restaurant. Every conversation we've had. Every time I laughed with you and then felt guilty for laughing. Every time I wanted to reach out sooner and then stopped myself because I thought." She stopped, drew a breath. "Because I thought maybe I didn't deserve something easy yet. Maybe I hadn't finished paying for the last time I trusted someone completely." The words hit something deep and unguarded inside me. I stood up slowly from my chair and moved around the table until I was standing close enough for her to look at me without effort. "Elena," I said carefully, "I'm not asking you to forget what happened to you. I'm not asking you to arrive here healed and unbothered and ready. I'm 25 years old, and I don't have everything figured out either." I paused. "But I know what I felt sitting across from you that first night. And I know what I've felt every day since, and it doesn't feel like something I'm supposed to walk away from." Her eyes had gone glassy. She blinked once, carefully. "You're very young to be this certain," she whispered. "And you're very experienced to still be this afraid." I replied gently. Something broke open in her expression then. Not painfully, but the way a window opens. The way a room finally gets air. "I don't know how to do this," she admitted. "I don't know how to trust the good thing when it's standing right in front of me. I keep waiting for it to rearrange itself into something that makes more sense. Something safer. Maybe it doesn't get safer," I said. "Maybe it just gets more worth it." A single tear moved down her cheek. She didn't rush to wipe it away. "The age gap," she said softly. "My past. The mess of it." "I know," I said. "I'm still here." She looked at me for a long, wordless moment. Then she reached out and took my hand. Not dramatically, not desperately, but quietly. "The way you hold something you've decided is worth being careful with. I told Daniel not to contact me again," she said. "This morning, before I came here." She exhaled slowly. "I just needed you to know that I chose to come here without anything unfinished following me through the door." I squeezed her hand gently. "Then let's start there," I said. "That was 4 months ago. The rabbit, for the record, eventually found his carrot. The client cried. I considered it my finest professional achievement. Elena redesigned a small reading corner in my apartment. Good lighting, she insisted, effortless and warm. She brought a plant, left a book on my shelf, and somewhere in the quiet accumulation of ordinary moments, the joke our friends had engineered became the most serious and beautiful thing in my life. We still tease each other. She still corrects my timing. I still arrive early and call it exactly on time. But some evenings, she falls asleep on the couch while I'm working, and I look over at her. This careful, brilliant, extraordinary woman. And I think about how close we both came to walking away from something neither of us knew we needed. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that love sometimes arrives disguised as a joke and becomes the most real thing you've ever known. Please like this video, share it with someone it might reach, and subscribe for more stories told straight from the heart. The joke was never really a joke. It was just the beginning wearing a disguise.